Hi there, I'm Phil, and in these 6 short videos, I'm trying to help you to understand what a disciple-making movement is and how you can be part of one where you are. We're looking at Luke chapter 10, where Jesus commissions the 72 to go out into the towns and villages of Israel. And we're understanding that these are the instructions which Jesus still gives us today to succeed in the Great Commission. Jesus begins by saying to the 72, there's nothing wrong with the harvest fields. They are ripe for harvest, but there aren't enough workers. Pray that I will lead you to the workers you need to help you. And what's interesting is that Jesus doesn't send them to the synagogues. In other words, he doesn't say to them, you need more workers, so go to the believers and guilt trip them into helping you. Not that at all. He says, go to the places, to the communities that you're trying to reach, and believe that I will raise up co-workers for you from within the harvest fields themselves. In other words, the extra workers you need are unsaved non-believers in whose hearts God is working. Jesus refers to these in verse 6 as people of peace. He uses a phrase, it's a Hebrew phrase, which is used in the Psalms and in the prophets in the Old Testament to describe an ally, a co-worker, a companion. Jesus says, I'm at work in the hearts of people in the harvest field to make them your co-workers, your companions in this great mission that I've given you. You don't have to create amazing social networks for yourselves amongst the lost. You merely need to go to the lost and find those who already have a great social network, so that they can join you in the mission and be part of what I'm calling you to do. When we read verses 3 and 4, we begin to understand something of how we discover those people of peace. Later in the Gospels, later in the book of Acts, we discover that a person of peace is someone in whose heart God has already been working to make them open, hungry, and eager to share with others. Open, God's worked in their heart to make them admit that they are struggling and need God's help. Hungry, in the sense that they're not merely accepting their current situation. They're desperate for things to change. They want to know the gospel and to say yes to God. And they're quick to share. They're not spiritual sponges who just want to take. They're people who care about the people around them. Like Cornelius, the person of peace in Acts 10, who when Peter comes to his home, discovers that Cornelius has invited all his friends and his family to hear the good news. Or someone like Lydia, the person of peace in Acts 16, who as soon as she responds to the gospel, says to Paul and to Silas, if you consider me a believer, come to my house. I want you to share this news with my friends and my family. Someone like Matthew, a person of peace, one of the disciples himself, who when Jesus calls him in Matthew's gospel, in the very next verse, we discover he invites all his tax collecting friends to hear about Jesus too. So the question is, how do we find such people? If we believe that God is at work in the hearts of non-believers, making them open, hungry, and swift to share whatever they learn with others, how on earth do we find them? Jesus says to us in verses 3 and 4, go, I'm sending you out like lambs among wolves. Do not take a purse or bag or sandals, and do not greet anyone on the road. Well, Jesus basically says to us that the way to flush out a person of peace is not to appear in town looking strong. Hey, I've come with this great Christian ministry. We're going to help you. It's the exact opposite. It says the way to flush out a person of peace is to arrive somewhere looking really weak. If you want to find out who's open and hungry, go with nothing and see who invites you into their home. If you want to see who's likely to share what you give them with others, go with nothing and expect people to share what they have with you. Because if someone's generous towards you with what they have, they'll be generous towards others with what they learn from you. Jesus says it's a bit like in John 4, when Jesus wants to find a person of peace in the Samaritan village of Sychar. He arrives without a water bottle so that he can say to the woman at the well, hey, you've got a bucket. could you put your bucket down and give me a drink? He assumes a place of vulnerability to see who's willing to help him. A bit like Abraham's servant in Genesis 24, when he goes to a well and he says, God, would you show me who I'm looking for by the woman who is willing to give me water and to look after my camels as well? The place of need opens up the person of peace. It's maybe like Jesus with Peter in Luke 5. It's because Jesus doesn't have a boat of his own. He needs to ask Peter, hey, can I preach from your boat? And that's how he connects with Peter. It's always need which enables Jesus to form a connection with a person of peace. It's like arriving in town in Jericho and saying to Zacchaeus, hey, I need to stay at your house because I don't have anywhere to stay. Or Paul and Barnabas going out on their missionary journeys, or Paul and Silas constantly needing to stay somewhere. They would meet at the house of Titius Justus or of Lydia or someone else. Their need was what flushed out the person of peace. It's so different from what we're used to, but this is what's happening all around the world. As missionaries stop saying we've come to town with the answers and start coming into town looking for people who are open to them and will receive them, they're beginning to train up insiders to reach their communities. Let me tell a story from Iraq where one of my friends is a disciple maker. Not so long ago, maybe a couple of years ago, an Iraqi Muslim came to know Jesus. It was amazing. And they invited him to, the local Western style church because it was all they knew to do at the time. They invited him there and they encouraged him to become part of the church. And as a result of the changes that took place in his life over the next 3 months, he became more Christian and went back home to his town in rural Iraq and was rejected. They said to him, never, ever come back to this town again. If you come back, we will kill you because of the person you've become. We don't even recognize you. And my Iraqi disciple maker friend, when he reflects, he says, I feel like the score on that encounter was 1 for Jesus and 99 for the devil. We managed to win one person to Christ, but actually he repulsed 99 others from the gospel. Whereas the insider, where we're not trying to invite people to church, we're actually trying to invite ourselves into their home. We're trying to be with them and take them on a journey. They stay within their communities, like 1 Corinthians 7, where the Apostle Paul says, let everyone who comes to know Christ stay in the position they were when they found him. Like we help them to stay where they are so that they can be insiders within their community, leading people to know Jesus. It takes time, it takes effort. It's actually hard to go into non-Christian spaces and to live there rather than just trying to invite people quickly out into our own Christian space. I think it's why Jesus ends these 2 verses by saying, don't greet anyone on the road. He's not saying be rude to people. He's just saying there are so many distractions. Sunday services, wonderful though they can also be a massive distraction. Church communities, wonderful though they can be a massive distraction. I know so many believers who actually have no non-believing friends whatsoever because all their social needs are met within the church. It's like Jesus says, don't get distracted. I'm sending you deep into non-believing territory so that you can find the people in whose hearts I'm working so you can be with them and help them to become your co-workers in the harvest field. And in the next video, we'll carry on and we'll understand a little bit about how we go about that.